Oh God, I'm gonna try not crying. Does the possibility of having more than one autistic child make you consider relocating to Boston again? Hello, landing crew. Welcome to today's video of the signs of autism in an 18-month-old toddler. This video is actually about my 18-month-old Liam. He has been diagnosed recently with moderate to severe autism. This is also Liam's story. I think it's a very important story to tell. It's all about our little guy, and I know so many people are kind of anxious to know. I had no idea that 17 months ago when I made the video of the newborn test results that I would be making this video. So we have 6 children. We have an almost 15-year-old daughter, Danielle. She's from a previous relationship. Danielle and Lonnie Jr. are 2 oldest. There is nothing autism or special needs about them. They are typical children. So then we have our almost 12-year-old son, Noah. Noah has been diagnosed with autism, mild to moderate functioning. He's been diagnosed with severe ADHD along with intellectual disability. Now, he had a genetics test done when he was about 4 years old, and they found out that he actually has a couple of abnormalities, genetic microdeletions, meaning the deletion is like itty bitty tiny, but it can affect these things. It can cause low muscle tone, which he has. It can cause autism, intellectual disability, and all these things. I'm going to briefly try to explain how we have so many kids on the spectrum, because that's always a question. We waited 7 years before we even talked about having another one. We went to a geneticist. They said since our 2 oldest was fine, then it should be fine. Lex was completely fine. Lex is my 3-year-old. He was meeting all of his milestones. Everything was good. Closer to 2 is when he started to show some red flags for autism. Nothing that really stood out, but was like, is this autism? Is this not? But by that time, I was already pregnant with Liam, which is the kid we're talking about right now. I unexpectedly got pregnant when Liam was 4 months old with our baby girl, Penelope. That's who crib I'm in front of right now. When I shared on social media on our channel that Liam, our 18-month-old, had been diagnosed with autism, everyone was like, how in the world do you diagnose a baby? I was not surprised by this inquiry because I thought the same thing. But when they're this age, when they are between the ages of 12 and 24 months, it is less about what the child is doing and it's more about what the child is not doing. So not only am I going to tell Liam's story, but I'm going to go over the signs of autism in a toddler, but also what a typical toddler should be doing. I will also talk about the differences between Lex, Liam, and Noah, as I know that's a big question, like what are the differences that you're seeing? And at the very end, I will do a Q&A just to help you guys out because there's so much information. I'm gonna leave all the timestamps in here. If you're watching this and I mention a couple of things that your baby does or your toddler does, that does not mean they have autism. If I mention some things that your kid does not do, that doesn't mean they don't have autism. Liam has pretty much every single autism sign that you can have. A child doesn't have to have every single sign in order to be autistic. The autism spectrum can get really confusing, especially when you're talking about such a young age. So that is why I'm encouraging you, if you have any concern, please talk to their doctor. Do not use this video to diagnose your child. I know it's so easy with social media, Google, YouTube, all of those resources out there. It can definitely make us more paranoid. So with that said, any vaccine comments, whether they're ugly or they're well-intentioned, will be deleted and you will be blocked. This is not the video, the time, or the place to try to push your personal belief and opinion on myself or other people in the comments. I have a video about our stance on vaccinations and how we feel about it. So with all those said, let's move on to Liam's story. So Liam is our rainbow baby. And what that means is that I had 2 miscarriages before Liam. We did not think that we were going to be able to have another baby after Alexander. When they did the ultrasound, they said that it looked like he implanted in the exact right spot. He was a miracle, basically. And I feel like in a lot of ways, he still is. I remember when my midwife laid him on my tummy and I looked down and I just knew like there was just something in me. When Liam was 4 weeks old, we got a genetic test on him. I did not do that for Lex. I didn't do that for Lex until after Liam. I don't know why I never tested Lex. With Liam, I just had this sinking feeling. It did come back that he had the same abnormality as Noah, the one that is linked to autism. But the thing is that just because your child has that abnormality, that doesn't mean that they will or will not have autism. And if they do have autism, it can't guarantee like what level functioning they will be. So even though we had that information, it really really didn't help us a whole lot except for me to be really paranoid. He was just really different. Just little things here and there, like he was a really slow eater. It would take him forever to finish a bottle. He was a late smiler, and then he was having reflux, and then we found out he had dairy allergy, and then shortly after we found out that he had a kidney infection. Liam's first 6 months of life was literally like one thing after another. Around 4 months old, he started to see a physical therapist because that's when his doctor figured out that she thought he had torticollis and plagiocephaly, which torticollis is basically, I might be explaining this wrong, but I think it's where they like one side of the neck muscle is like stiff. They can't fully rotate their head anyway. And plagiocephaly is where they have a flat back head completely. We tried to do tummy time with him a lot, but he was just a very floppy baby. He was like in that newborn stage that they're in, like the first 3 days where they really don't do much. Like they just kind of lay there. That was Liam. He just didn't do much. But around 4 months old, his doctor mentioned it. She sent us to a physical therapist. We found out that he had low muscle tone. He also had head lag, which is basically where they're not able to keep their head in line with their shoulders when you're pulling them up. So all of his fine and gross motor skills were behind. Around 9 months old, we started occupational therapy. There were some things that we were kind of concerned about with like his sound. Like even as he was getting older, he still had issues with us vacuuming, even like a room over. We had to take him to literally to the other side of the house. He started walking independently at 17 months. Now, even at 18 months though, he still crawls about 40% of the time. So he's still mastering that. He can't walk with shoes on. Even from a younger age, he always seemed to avoid eye contact. He was never cuddly. He was never that kid that was crying and you picked him up and he's like, oh, he's never like laid his head on my shoulder ever. He used to like arch up his body. He was a very, very, very complacent baby. Nothing really upset him except for occasional sound and when he was sick. Like that's the only time he would cry. One of the biggest signs out of Liam's first year that really made me think that something not typical was going on is probably the weirdest thing ever, but he was such a smiley baby. That's not a bad thing. I've had happy babies before. Danielle was a really happy baby, but it was to an abnormal point. Even my kids were like, is he supposed to be smiling that much? We would walk in the room, he would be just facing the wall, having no idea that we're in here and just laughing and smiling at the wall. Everything makes him smile, like everything. It was beyond what I felt like was a typical thing, and that always kind of struck me as kind of strange. Around 12 to 13 months, he said mom and dada. He never said it to us, so it wasn't functional, but he was saying the words and we thought he was gonna be an early talker. It was exciting, like after struggling with Lex being so speech delayed for so long, and then Liam just, you know, saying it, it was just amazing. He said those words for about 3-4 weeks. It was great. And then we never heard him say them again. He's 18 months now, and we haven't heard him say it since he was like 13 months old. Liam and Penelope are 12 months apart. So some of these things, I think I just chalked it up to having a new baby in the house. His sleep around 13 months went horrible. It was to a point where he was waking up more than Penelope. Penelope and Liam never woke each other up, but Liam would wake up like 4 times in the middle of the night. He was hard to put down. It was just a lot. Liam was harder than our newborn. He wasn't like that before. He was a great sleeper, so it was very strange. He started running a fever about a month after this happened, and we found out that he had an ear infection. So we were kind of a little bit excited about the ear infection because we're like, oh, we have a reason on why he's waking up all the time. We can just give him antibiotics and it will get better. It got a little bit better, but not much. He still would wake up around 2-3 times in a night. He still wakes up that much. So it was like a sleeping issue that still hasn't resolved itself. Something else that struck me as very strange, when we brought Nellie home from the hospital, Liam did not care about her. He wasn't upset that she was there. He was literally indifferent, and it's like he didn't even notice that it was a baby. When we brought Liam home from the hospital, Lex was like crying about it. Lex was so upset when we brought Liam home. But again, there's only like a year difference between them, but it never got better. Like even now, he does not acknowledge her. The only time he acknowledges her is to go over to her and steal her bottle. He doesn't even look at her. He just looks at the bottle, takes it, and runs off. About 13, 14 months old, he started to do this head shaking thing. He had an obsession with cords and phones, remotes. He still has that obsession. He hated wearing shoes. If we tried putting like tennis shoes on him, he would like cry and cry and cry. The one thing that really stood out to me, when he was about 16 to 17 months old, he started to take off his diaper and play in his feces. That was like something that Lex had done. None of my other kids really did it, and if they did it, it was like 1 or 2 times. It wasn't like a big deal. Lex did it for years, and then Liam started to do it, and I was like, oh no, I don't want to go through this again. But he also started to eat it. The first time he did it, I thought, oh, it must be curiosity, and then he kept doing it. He would just try to eat everything. Like how he reacts to ice cream is the same he reacts to green beans. I almost wonder if he even has taste buds yet. Like, I don't know what age they develop at, and whether it's edible, non-edible, he just tries to chew it like it's food and it belongs in his tummy. All these things I'm mentioning, they were very fleeting and very small. I looked at him and I saw a happy, laughing, perfect little boy. Even after having a child on the spectrum, I was still kind of ignoring what was right in front of me. He kept doing the head shaking thing a lot more. At first, I thought he was just trying to shake his head no at us. It wasn't that. He would just randomly be like walking around the house doing it. I had already started the process for early steps because he's behind in his speech and development. I knew he needed early intervention for that, but at the same time, he was only 18 months, so they're only supposed to have 5 words at that point. So I'm like, he's not that behind. I didn't do the autism evaluation because I thought he had autism. Liam is such an easy, complacent child that nothing really struck me as extremely concerning. In fact, I almost didn't get Liam's autism evaluation. I just went ahead with the evaluation just to rule it out. The best way I can explain it is it's kind of like when you're late on your period, you don't think you're pregnant, but you can't get that thought out of the back of your mind, so you go ahead and take a pregnancy test so you can rule it out. That was a really expensive test, but that's what I did. At the early steps evaluation is when they told me he was significantly behind, that he was like at a 7 to 9 month level in all these different categories. He scored 4 out of 5, extremely low. That is when I kind of just knew that we were going to be getting a diagnosis. 2 days later, started his full autism evaluation, and it was just kind of a whirlwind. Somehow I got sucked into this big autism hurricane. I'm like, I don't know how I got here. Like, how did this all happen? It happened so quickly. It took me quite a few weeks to really wrap my head around everything that had happened. And that's why this video is coming to you guys much later than I intended, because it was just a lot to have to process, a lot to have to handle. That's kind of Liam's story. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk to you guys about what a typical 18-month should be doing. We're not going to go into development because I feel like development is kind of a very big range. There's different things that kids all do at different stages, but for a typical child, there's a lot of things that are innately in them that we don't even realize, things that they just naturally do. So this information is from WebMD, and it's saying that an 18-month-old should say several words, say the word no and shake their head, respond to questions, produce speech-like sounds, understand the concepts of in and on, also repeat some words heard in a conversation. This is what we call verbal and nonverbal communication, expressive and receptive. He is not considered to have any expressive, receptive, verbal, nonverbal communication. So basically what that means is that Liam cannot let us know what he wants, how he's feeling, and he can't understand us when we're talking to him. He has no words. He doesn't say no. He doesn't shake his head no. He doesn't respond to questions. He does babble though, and that gives us hope that he won't be nonverbal forever. However, his babbling sounds different than it did in my other children. I don't know, it's hard to explain. It doesn't sound like mama, dad, like it doesn't sound like that kind of babbling. Now, he also does a thing now where if he hears a word, so if we say Liam a whole lot, he will go around the house all day going, Leon. We always say his name with a tune, like we're like, Liam, and he'll do it all day long. Then he goes to sleep, he wakes up, and he doesn't do it anymore. So they think that that's Ekalila or Ekalila, but of course, nothing that he's saying or doing is functional. If we say, Liam, look, or look over there, he doesn't look at our fingers finger. He doesn't look in the direction we're pointing. It's like we said nothing. That is why they wanted a hearing test on Liam, because he also does not recognize his name. I'll talk about that more later. So they're saying for social emotional skills, your 18-month-old should like to hand objects to others as play and also come show you things. Your child may have temper tantrums, be fearful around strangers, cling to parents or caregivers in new situations, show affection to people she knows well, explore alone with a parent close by. At this stage, it's normal for your child to kind of recognize who's a stranger, who you guys are, and also to want to come show you guys stuff, like be like, look what I did, or look what I found, those kind of things. We've never had that exchange with Liam ever. He loves strangers and he loves us. He doesn't react differently to a stranger than he does us. If we're in a new environment, he isn't like clinging to us or anything like that. It's like he's at home. But like if I leave, it doesn't bother him. As I said before, he's never been a cuddly baby. That's just things that he just didn't do. He doesn't play with toys appropriately. He doesn't stack blocks. Every now and then he might try to run a car on the floor, but basically he just looks at it and like do the wheel once or twice, and then he just goes back to walking around. He loves walking around. He loves cords. He loves remotes. Those are his thing. Like cords make him so much happier than anything else. And I'm just wondering like why he couldn't be fixated on a safer object than cords. So on cognitive skills, they should know the use of ordinary things, a brush, spoon, or chair. They should be able to point to a body part, scroll on their own, follow a one-set verbal command without any gestures, play pretend such as feeding a doll, point to show others something interesting. Liam does none of those things. Physically, he can point, but he does not do it to communicate with us. He just goes around like that's how he touches and explores things now. Liam has very little eye contact. For a while, I thought he had better eye contact when we were far away, and I guess that's also what was confusing to me. We realized that when we would get closer, he's usually looking at our nose or lips because he'll like put his finger in our mouth. He does have stems. He does have the head shaking stem. He also started this thing where he would jump up and down repeatedly in his crib. And at first, when he first started doing it, we were like, oh, it's so cute. He's like a little frog. Apparently, that is a stem for him. He will just go around the house just like holding on to something and jumping. He loves jumping everywhere. He also does a vocal stimming, but I've noticed he only does that if he gets really, really, really stressed out. And it's basically where he's just saying vowel sounds and he's just very upset. Now I'm going to talk to you guys about the differences between Lex, Liam, and Noah. If anyone is new and confused, Lex is my 3-year-old. He does have a diagnosis of high functioning autism, but it was borderline. So she's kind of like on the fence about it. She's not sure. Even though he has the diagnosis, I really don't like using him to compare because other than some scripting he does, some social and behavioral issues and escaping and things like that, he's kind of a typical boy. He more reminds me of the older kids than he does of Noah and Liam. The only thing that Lex and Noah have in common is their hyperactivity and also their escaping. So Noah and Liam, the things that they're alike on is they were both developmentally delayed. So they both have low muscle tone. Noah was also really hyperactive. Even at Liam's age, he was just go and go and go and go. Nothing was easy with Noah. We love him to death, but nothing was easy. He wasn't that calm kid to just sit there and chill. He was all over the place. I've said this before, but if we would have taken Noah to get an autism evaluation at 18 months, he wouldn't have got a diagnosis. He was just one of those kids that just had some autistic features, but he also had some behavioral ones and some ADHD ones. It's just a really hard formula when you're trying to get a child diagnosed that young when they have so many other things going on. Liam is more of a classic autism. Noah and Liam both had sleeping issues. Noah really didn't do a lot of stimming. Liam is really chill. He's really happy. Noah was a really happy, complacent baby, but as he got older, that changed. Liam is still just chill. Noah was trying to talk more than Liam is. It was like you couldn't understand what he was saying, but you could tell that he was saying something. Noah has an articulation disorder and it was really bad when he was younger. Liam is babbling and saying things, but you can tell like it's not actual words or anything. And I don't think that Liam has an articulation disorder because he can say Liam just fine. I just don't know verbally like where he's gonna be. Liam and Noah are just different. They're both sweet, and I think they're both just sweet souls, and that's not to say my other kids aren't sweet, but I feel like every child has something different and special about them. We're going to get into this Q&A. Okay, so Jen G asked, did Liam randomly start showing signs of autism out of the blue one day, or was it a gradual thing? I definitely think it's a gradual thing, but I think most parents would agree with me when you get that diagnosis, it feels like it's out of the blue. It wasn't until early steps started asking me all these questions like, how often does he show you things? Does he look when you point, or does he point? Like all these things that I didn't even realize he was supposed to be doing. I didn't talk about this, but it's called joint attention. When you are playing with a child and, for example, you're blowing bubbles, or maybe you're like building a castle or something, a typical child will like look at the item and then look at you, and like it's a lot of looking at faces and eye contact for approval and things like that. Liam just doesn't have that. When you're playing with him, he is not looking at the person. He is looking at the object. If we have a remote he wants, he never looks at us once in the face. When Lex wants something, he's constantly like trying to grab it, looking at us, trying to grab it, looking at us. MPHO Malapo asked, do either of you have autism, Asperger's, and would it matter if you did genetically or socially? My husband or myself have not been diagnosed with autism. However, Lonnie has some quirky traits, and I also have a lot of autistic traits. Like if I were to be evaluated, I would not be surprised if I got an autism diagnosis. I STEM, I have sensory issues. I feel like we both together have autism traits. If I were to guess like who gave our kids autism, because clearly it's probably a genetic thing at this point, I would guess it was me. The abnormality that they all three have, they said it's most commonly inherited from the mom side. Also, it seems like the kids that take after me more than Lonnie are the ones that are affected more. Alex G asked, do you think he has a favorite color yet? No, he doesn't seem to. Which sibling does he have the closest bond with? I think Noah. Noah is like the only sibling that can really calm him down. Based on his reaction to it, what do you think is his most disliked food? He has never reacted to food in a negative way, ever. Was there any regression for Liam? My son regressed around Liam's age. Also, does he stare at the ceiling a lot? Yes, so Liam will stare at the ceiling a lot, and he follows the ceiling fan. He always was like that, even as a baby. Like he was mesmerized by like lights and the ceiling. But the only thing Liam really regressed in was his words, like being verbal. The other thing I guess he regressed in was he used to clap a lot, and he doesn't do that much anymore. Brittany Stafford asked, my only question is if you're personally seeing signs, how do you bring it up to the doctor without seeming crazy? My doctors are lousy AF. So we got really lucky with Liam's doctor back up in Jacksonville. She was really on top of it. I have had doctors that just didn't understand. And again, I think if your child isn't classic autism, where like they're just following every pattern of autism, I think sometimes it can be hard. I personally would just straight out ask them, I'm concerned. They are showing some red flags for autism. I would like a referral to a developmental pediatrician. Be in there and be confident. You are your child's advocate, and there is nothing wrong with getting your child an evaluation. I would also look up your early intervention program. Our early intervention in Florida, you don't have to have a referral or anything. You can just call them up and be like, hey, I want my kid evaluated to see if they qualify for your services or not. I don't know if every state's like that, but it does not hurt to call and ask. I think that's the best first step. Never let anyone make you feel crazy for filling these things. I think I'm the perfect example of that because we got so much backlash. I got so much hate. Everyone was just thinking that I was just making up these things in my head. Listen to your gut. Worst case, you find out your intuition and gut was wrong and you in fact just have a quirky kid or something else, or maybe they're just delayed, but you were your child's advocate, and I think that's so important. Sarah Copernall asks, is Liam your first redhead, and does he have freckles? How do you keep him safe from the Florida sun? He is my first and only redhead. Penelope definitely is not gonna have red hair. Sad face. He does not have freckles because you get freckles by being on the sun, and when Liam is on the sun, we are very careful to protect him because he has really sensitive skin. So we put lots of sunscreen on him. He wears hats, glasses. Betsy Norwood asked kind of a question about Liam, but what does an autism evaluation look like? Betsy, I'm so glad you asked this because I kind of forgot to talk about it. What an autism evaluation kind of looks like for an 18-month-old, or how it looked for our 18-month-old, is they did a parent intake. So they're just gonna ask you a lot of questions. That parent intake is like 1 to 2 hours. They ask so many things, different scenarios within those scenarios, and it is very detailed. And then they do do the actual evaluation. There's specific things that they try to do with them. So they try to get them to imitate. They try to give them maybe a bottle and see if they'll feed the baby, or maybe a phone and see if they put it to their ear. Because at 18 months, those are things that should naturally be something that they would do. For example, they have that rabbit thing and they see how do they react with that. Do they want to try imitate pushing it, or do they think it's funny? Are they laughing at the rabbit, or are they fixated with something else? They do a lot of the joint attention. So they try playing bubbles and to see if they're having eye contact during this time. It basically looks like they're playing with your kid. They're looking for specific things that, again, are naturally ingrained in typical kids. They're looking to see if they point. They're looking to see if they're verbally or non-verbally communicating. They're looking to see, okay, if I try to get you to look over here and I point over there, are they looking in that direction? Are they even looking at my finger? Our psychologist was amazing. If something seemed kind of like off, or maybe she felt like it might have just been because he was in the evaluation room or something, she would ask me, how would he react at home with this? Like, so she was getting a full picture of Liam, not just from the parent intake and not just from what she's seeing in the evaluation, but seeing him as a whole. We also had the advantage that because we had all of our kids kind of evaluated together, like back to back within a week's time, she was able to see Lex and Liam kind of play together in the room. So she's just looking to see how he's interacting. I think there's just a lot that we don't realize that 18-month-olds should naturally do that children on the spectrum just usually don't do. Myris Family Multiples asked, 1, do you think any Liam's behaviors might be learned from your older son? So that's the first question. And my answer to that is no. The things that got him the autism diagnosis isn't behaviors. It wasn't he was doing something. It was that he wasn't reacting a certain way. And all of the things that he was missing, a lot of them Noah does. Number 2, how do you handle others' looks and even vocal criticisms in public that inevitably occur when meltdowns happen? I've just learned to ignore them and just realize that they were not trained well by their mama. Is Liam a mommy's boy or daddy's boy? Definitely a mommy's boy. Siren asked, hi Stephanie, my question is what helped you the most going through a difficult time like you are right now? What can others do to make this process less difficult? So this is gonna be a hard answer. There is nothing anyone can do. I think my best friend Ashley probably was the best person to go through this with me, but it wasn't because she did anything. It's because she didn't try comparing. She didn't try making assumptions. She didn't try telling me, oh, I'm sure he'll be like fine in a couple of years. I don't think that just because Liam has a diagnosis of moderate to severe now, that means that he'll be moderate to severe his entire life. I think with therapies, he'll do great no matter what functioning level he is, but it is kind of hard when people are trying to either downplay your child's diagnosis, minimize it, or try to get out their crystal ball and be like, oh, it's all gonna be fine. I don't know, she was just there. I guess she made the coping part of it and she made me feel not alone. It didn't make me feel any less like my world was imploding. I think the best thing you can do is just listen to your friend, just be there, realize that a lot of times they don't want advice. Like they probably have advice, so many opinions coming in from so many different ways. Sometimes it's just nice to have a sounding board of someone who's not trying to do that. Our Blessed Life asks, is there a waiting list for ABA therapy where you live? If so, how long will you wait? For some places, there's like a 3 to 6 month wait. Thankfully, I'm going through a place that offers in-home. We're kind of going through the waiting for the insurance to approve it and all of that junk. So we should hopefully be starting ABA within a couple of months. Alice March asked, I've read some concerning things about ABA. Are you considering it? What are your thoughts on it? We will be trying it out. It's going to be in our home. I'm going to be monitoring it. And if it's anything I feel uncomfortable about, I have no problem pulling the plug right then and there. I've always been a mom that's been really involved with my kids' therapies. I always go back with Noah and Liam. One, to just make sure that we agreed with it and that they were treating our kid nicely, but also so that we could take whatever they're trying to teach them and do it at home. Because your therapist is only getting 30 minutes to 60 minutes so many times a week with your child. So it's very, very helpful if you can continue implementing those things at home. Ashley asked, how does Noah calm down Liam? Do you think that Noah and Liam will have a closer, stronger bond with each other as they get older? There's a lot of questions here. When I mentioned that in the video of Noah calming down Liam, it was because Noah knows that Liam loves Baby Bum on YouTube, so he put Baby Bum on for him. I do think that Noah and Liam will have a strong bond just because Noah loves Liam so much, Liam loves Noah so much. They just kind of fit well together. Noah knowing that Liam has a diagnosis, I don't really think it's changed how Noah feels about Liam. I don't think it's made them closer or not closer. I think that Noah's just kind of accepted it and it is just what it is. What is the best way to help a child or teen down from a meltdown, the best way to help them with the meltdown is to just let them write it out, not try to stop it once it's started. Just get them to a safe place where they're not hurting themselves or others. Do you think that ABA will help Liam recognize, understand who you and your husband are to him, and maybe his name being his one day? I hope so. I think those are the things that I really want ABA to help with. I don't want to take away his stems. I don't want to take away his autism. I don't want to take away his quirky traits. I just want him to have a way to communicate with us. I want him to realize when I say his name, I'm talking to him. Okay, so this is a really long comment, so I'm not going to read it all, but it says, I was wondering if you had any tips on how to encourage communication as in talking to us instead of narrating nursery rhymes. I really don't, girl. I'm so sorry. With Liam, we're just repeating the same thing. That's how we got Lex to talk. It's just repetition, repetition, repetition. At this point, we aren't really pushing vocal words as much as we are him having some type of communication with us. I've never really had to worry about if a child was going to be verbal or not. With Lex, I never really worried about that. I knew that he was going to be verbal one day. He could understand what we were saying. Like, I could give him a diaper, be like, go throw this away in the trash, or go grab me your diaper, and he would do these things. I understand those like fears because I feel the same way. Christy Turpin asked, is it expected that he will remain nonverbal, or is it too early to tell? It's too early to tell because he's still a little guy. I mean, Lex didn't start talking till like a few months before his 3rd birthday. Okay, so Alex asked me about some questions about Lex. Now, Lex can be a completely different video. Just comment below if you would like for me to do a similar video like this. It will be so much shorter. Diamond Painting Dreamer said, my autism son, when he has autism meltdowns, would immediately bite his hands to a point of actually taking chunks out of his hands. Noah used to bite other people. Liam will bite himself, but not to a point where he's like taking actual like chunks out of his hand. Rosalind Gummer asked, do you believe that Liam has ADHD or intellectual disability? I don't think Liam has ADHD. I've had a lot of kids with ADHD and it usually manifests by now. I don't know. I think it's really early to be able to say if he has it or not. As far as intellectual disability, I have no idea. The only way you really get diagnosed with intellectual disability is through an IQ test. That testing really isn't accurate until age 6 anyway. Sharon said, I love you and all your family. Thank you, Sharon. You once said you were a late talker. Do you think you could have been diagnosed as on the autism spectrum as a child? Yes. I feel like if there was as much awareness now as there were back then, I probably would have been on the spectrum because I had the same problem as Noah. Like, I would try talking, but you couldn't understand what I was saying. I didn't start talking clearer until I was about 5. And I had lots of speech issues as a child, but my mom said that she remembered I would just like play alone all the time. I remember as a kid, like I wanted friends, but it didn't bother me that I didn't have friends. Like, I was completely content playing by myself, just doing my thing. Kelsey asked, what was your first sign you saw that made you think he would have special needs? I think it was his low muscle tone, because by that time he was smiling a whole lot, again, just abnormally happy. And it just made me think, is it easier now with Noah that he is older, or was it easier when he was younger? It is so much easier now that he's older. Those younger years are just hard when they're not able to communicate with you. When they're trying to figure out everything, you're trying to figure out everything, and it's just a big hot mess. Kelsey Carr asked a really good question. Does the possibility of having more than one autistic child make you consider relocating to Boston again? Like, yeah. Like, if I'm being honest, yeah. Like, when we came down here for services, I never thought that we were going to be coming down here for services and needing so many for Liam. Like, that was never anything I thought of. It was kind of in the back of my mind, and I always said that, like, we need to move down for Noah, but in case we have other special need children kind of thing. Now that it's like a reality and I'm being faced with it, yeah, it's scary. It's scary being in a state. It's scary being in an area where I feel like we're having to fight for services. This area is giving us way better luck than Jacksonville ever did, and we got so far with this. But yeah, relocating has definitely not been ruled out. I know we've always said we're gonna give it 2 years and see how it goes. By Christmas of 2020, so by next Christmas, if things are still not looking good, then at that point we will look into relocating. Even though this area is better than Jacksonville, is it enough where I feel like it can give all of my kids the best quality of life. It isn't just Boston we're considering. We've always had a dream of wanting to buy land. We aren't exactly sure what we're doing. It's just hard. It was hard when we had one special needs child, but it's really hard when you have a baby. Liam is still a baby to me. Regardless what happens in a year and a half when we decide to stay or move or whatever is decided, I will always believe this is where we're supposed to be right now. This is the place that got us the diagnoses that we need. They have better early intervention than Jacksonville did. I don't think if we would have moved up to Boston that we would have been able to have these evaluations so soon. We would have had to wait. We would have been going through Boston Children's Hospital. If we found out that the wait up there was really long, then we would have had to pay out of pocket. Living up in Boston is expensive, so I don't think that we would have been able to, just a month or two after moving all the way up there, shell out a couple $1,000s for these evaluations. Carol M said, my daughter turned 18 months on July 8th. We had our 18-month checkup today and they had me do a questionnaire. It's called the MCHAT. I think that's the one you're talking about, or it may be the ASQ. Based on that questionnaire, she was completely negative. Is that something they did with Liam or any of your other children? So Liam actually got diagnosed right before his 18-month appointment. At his checkup, they had me do the MCHAT and he was failing every single one of them. They had me do that with Liam and Lex. Lex's MCHAT was actually what made them think he had some red flags for autism. Catherine Johnson asked, does Liam interact with his siblings or other children or have little to no interest? He doesn't really even play with the older kids. Like Noah and Lex will be in the playroom playing. Liam will just walk right between them, not looking at either of them and just like off in his own world. One question I want to ask is, does Liam follow commands? So no, he does not follow commands. He doesn't really have that receptive language. If I say, come here, Liam, go get this, go do that, sit down, hand me, like he doesn't understand anything that I'm saying from what I can see. Maybe he is understanding me and he's just ignoring me. I don't know. So Olivia asked, I think you already answered this, but are you guys working on doing sign language for him? And are you guys thinking about getting him a Dynavox if he remains nonverbal? Yes, we are working on sign language. That's the one thing we're working on with him is eats, drinks, and more is kind of where we're starting because I feel like those are the most important. And that's kind of what his therapies will help out with. And if he does remain nonverbal, we will get any device or app or anything he needs to help him communicate his needs. Kayla Geyer asked, now that you have at least 2 children on the autism spectrum, have you and Lonnie considered getting a therapy pet to help and support them? So we have been wanting to get Noah a therapy dog for a while. We just want to do it at the right time that's best for our family. We've had a lot going on. So originally we were going to get him one for his 12th birthday, but honestly, the thought of adding a dog to our house right now is a little bit like hard pass. I just couldn't imagine it right now. And Noah keeps asking about it. I don't know. I feel like adding an animal is like adding a child. Like you don't want to just like go out and get one. You want to make sure that everyone's ready and you're ready. And I just don't know, with everything we've been through this last year, like 2019's been a crazy year for us. I just don't know if we're ready for that yet. Exact PI asked, I'm more interested in the low muscle tone sign and effects. Could you cover that too? I know he had PT, or was it OT for a while? He actually had both. I can do a low muscle tone video if you guys want me to do that, because I feel like the low muscle tone can be different because a child can have low muscle tone and not have autism, but there are a lot of signs that a lot of parents may not be aware. So yeah, I could definitely do a video if you want to do that. Okay guys, so we are done. All right, so this is a really long video. Oh my God. Again, if you have any other videos that you want me to do, any other topics, especially like around special needs, anything that you think would help you or someone else, please leave them in the comments below. I love doing videos like this because I feel like they're the most helpful. It's like I thought I knew so much about autism, but during that week when we were just like starting everything and everything was so new and scary to us with Liam, just going through and just watching these videos was so helpful. But I actually found that there were very little videos. I thought there would be way more. That's it. I love you guys. If you are new here, go ahead and hit that red subscribe button and we will see you guys tomorrow.
Where you move make me blind. You will always be there. There's no doubt in my mind. You will always be there.